Right now, as you watch this video, bombs are falling on Tehran. The most powerful military in the world is striking one of the oldest cities on Earth, a city that has existed for thousands of years, a civilization that was already ancient when Rome was still a collection of mud huts on a hill above a river. And the question that every journalist, every politician, every analyst is asking right now is, why won't Iran just submit? Why won't they just accept the terms? Why won't they stop? Why does this small country, this sanctioned, isolated, economically struggling nation, keep fighting the combined military power of the United States and Israel, while simultaneously holding the global economy hostage through the Strait of Hormuz? The answer is not in today's news. It is not in the last decade of nuclear negotiations. It is not even in the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The answer is 3,000 years old. And unless you understand those 3,000 years, you will never understand what is happening right now. This is the story of Iran, the nation that has outlasted every empire that ever tried to destroy it. To understand Iran, you must first understand Persia. Because Iran does not think of itself as a modern nation-state created by colonial border drawing. Iran thinks of itself as the continuation of one of the greatest empires in human history. And that identity, that memory of greatness, runs so deep in the Iranian psyche that no amount of sanctions, no amount of bombs, no amount of international isolation has ever been able to extinguish it. The Persian Empire was founded by Cyrus the Great in 550 BC, and Cyrus was unlike almost any conqueror in the ancient world. He did not rule through terror. He did not erase the cultures and religions of the peoples he conquered. He let them keep their languages, their customs, their gods. He freed the Jews from their Babylonian captivity, an act recorded in the Hebrew Bible, making Cyrus the only non-Jewish figure in the Old Testament referred to as a Messiah, an anointed one. He wrote what historians consider the first human rights charter in history, the Cyrus Cylinder, a clay document declaring that all peoples under Persian rule had the right to freedom of religion, freedom from slavery, and the right to return to their homelands. This was 2,500 years ago. The Magna Carta would not be written for another 1,700 years. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights would not come until 1948. At its peak, the Achaemenid Persian Empire was the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from Greece in the west to India in the east, from Egypt in the south to Central Asia in the north. Approximately 44% of the entire world's population lived under Persian rule at its height. No empire before or since has governed such a proportion of humanity. This is what Iranians mean when they talk about Persian greatness. They are not boasting, they are remembering. And that memory is the foundation of everything that follows.
Cyrus the Great was not just a conqueror, he was a philosopher of power. And his philosophy stands in almost complete contrast to every empire that came after him, including the one dropping bombs on his descendant nation right now. Cyrus understood something that very few powerful men have ever understood: that you cannot permanently rule people who do not choose to be ruled. That force creates compliance, but compliance is not loyalty. And without loyalty, an empire is just an occupation waiting to end. So instead of forcing conquered peoples to become Persian, he made them want to be Persian. He gave them dignity. He gave them autonomy. He gave them a place in the empire that preserved rather than erased their identity. The result was an empire of extraordinary diversity and stability, governed not by fear, but by what he called the good life for all peoples. The philosopher Xenophon, a Greek who had fought against the Persians and then studied their civilization, wrote an entire book about Cyrus called the Cyropaedia. It was one of the most widely read books in the ancient world. Alexander the Great carried it with him on his campaigns. Thomas Jefferson owned 2 copies. The founding fathers of America read and discussed it. The idea that a ruler derives his authority from the consent of the governed, that idea has Persian roots that most history books never acknowledge. What happened after the Persian Empire is one of the most extraordinary stories of cultural resilience in human history. Because what happened was this: every empire that conquered Persia eventually became Persian. Alexander the Great defeated the Achaemenid Empire in 330 BC. He burned Persepolis, the greatest city in the world, to the ground. He killed thousands. He conquered the entire Persian heartland. And then, he fell in love with Persian culture. He adopted Persian dress. He married a Persian princess named Roxana. He incorporated Persian nobles into his court and his military command. He declared himself the successor to the Persian kings. His Greek generals were horrified. They had come to destroy Persia. Their leader had become Persian. After Alexander's death, the Seleucid Empire, his Greek successors, ruled Persia for over a century. They built Greek cities. They promoted Greek culture. They tried to Hellenize Persia. And then the Parthians rose, a Persian dynasty that drove the Greeks out and restored Persian culture, Persian language, and Persian traditions. The Greek layer was absorbed. The Persian identity survived. The Arab conquest of the 7th century AD brought Islam to Persia. This was perhaps the most significant cultural transformation in Iranian history. Iran became Muslim, but it did not become Arab. The Persians adopted Islam and made it their own, developing a uniquely Persian Islamic culture of extraordinary sophistication in poetry, art, architecture, philosophy, and mysticism. The Persian language survived. Persian identity survived. Iran became the greatest center of Islamic civilization, producing Rumi, Hafiz, Avicenna, Al-Biruni, while remaining distinctly, defiantly Persian. The Mongols came in 1219 under Genghis Khan and again in 1258 under his grandson Hulagu. They destroyed cities, they massacred populations, they burned libraries. Historians estimate that the Mongol invasions reduced the population of Iran by up to 2/3. And yet, within 2 generations, the Mongol rulers of Persia had converted to Islam, were speaking Persian, were patronizing Persian poetry and art, and had been absorbed into the civilization they had tried to erase. This is the pattern. This is what 3,000 years of Iranian history teaches. Empires come, empires destroy, and then Iran absorbs them. Every single time. Most Westerners think the Iranian story starts in 1979, with the Islamic Revolution, with the hostage crisis, with Ayatollah Khomeini. They think of Iran as a country that suddenly, inexplicably, turned against the West, that chose religious extremism over modernity, that threw away prosperity for ideology. This understanding is almost completely wrong. And it is wrong because it starts in 1979 instead of 1953. In 1951, Iran had a democratic government. Mohammad Mossadegh was the democratically elected prime minister, a nationalist, a lawyer, a man who had been fighting for Iranian sovereignty for decades. He wore pajamas to international meetings because he suffered from a heart condition that required him to rest frequently. Western journalists mocked him. They did not take him seriously. They should have. Mossadegh looked at the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, a British corporation that was extracting Iran's oil and giving Iran approximately 16% of the profits while keeping 84% for Britain. And he said no. He nationalized the Iranian oil industry. He said, the oil beneath Iranian soil belongs to the Iranian people. The British government called it theft. The Iranian people called it justice. The British imposed an economic blockade. They tried to destabilize Mossadegh's government. When that failed, they went to the Americans. And in 1953, the CIA and British intelligence launched Operation Ajax, a coup. They bribed Iranian military officers, paid mobs to riot in the streets, spread propaganda, and overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran. Mossadegh was arrested, tried, and placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was installed as an absolute monarch answerable to Washington and London. The Iranian people had chosen democracy. The West destroyed it to protect oil profits. The Shah that the CIA installed was not a benevolent modernizer. He was a dictator. And he was America's dictator, which meant America protected him regardless of what he did to his own people. The Shah created Savak, the Iranian secret police. Trained by the CIA and Mossad, Savak arrested, tortured and executed political dissidents. Estimates of those killed under the Shah's regime range from thousands to tens of thousands. Torture methods used by Savak were documented by Amnesty International and were described as among the most brutal in the world. The United States government was fully aware. It continued to sell the Shah weapons, support his regime diplomatically, and describe him publicly as a great leader and a force for modernization. For 26 years, the Iranian people lived under this. They could not organize politically. They could not protest. The secular left had been destroyed, its leaders killed or imprisoned. The liberal Democrats had been destroyed. The only institution the Shah could not fully control was the mosque. The only space where Iranians could gather, organize, and speak was religious space. This is why the revolution of 1979 took a religious form. Not because Iranians are inherently theocratic, but because the CIA had systematically destroyed every other form of political organization available to them. The mosque was what was left. Khomeini was what was left. When the people finally rose up against the Shah in 1979, the only organized political force with the infrastructure to take power was the Islamic clergy. The West created the Islamic Republic of Iran by destroying Iranian democracy in 1953. That is not opinion. That is documented, declassified, admitted history. To understand why America has been at war with Iran, Cold War, proxy war, sanctions war, and now open military conflict since 1979, you need to understand one thing: the petrodollar system, because this conflict is not about nuclear weapons. It is not about human rights. It is not about terrorism. It is about the architecture of global financial power. In 1971, President Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It was backed by oil. Specifically, in 1974, the United States made a deal with Saudi Arabia. The Saudis would price all oil sales globally in US dollars. In exchange, America would provide military protection to the Saudi regime. The result: every country in the world that needs oil must first acquire US dollars to buy it. This creates permanent global demand for the dollar. It is what allows America to print money and run enormous deficits without its currency collapsing. It is the financial foundation of American global dominance. Iran has been trying to break the petrodollar system since the Islamic Revolution. In 2003, Iran opened an oil bourse, an exchange that allowed oil to be traded in currencies other than the dollar. In 2012, Iran began accepting gold and local currencies for oil sales. In recent years, Iran has been trading oil with China, Russia, and other nations in non-dollar currencies. Every time Iran does this, it is not just an economic act, it is an attack on the structural basis of American power. Muammar Gaddafi tried to create an African gold-backed currency to replace the dollar in African oil transactions. He was overthrown and killed in 2011. Saddam Hussein switched Iraq's oil sales from dollars to euros in 2000. He was invaded and executed in 2006. The pattern is not subtle. Any leader who seriously threatens the petrodollar system does not stay in power for long. Iran has been threatening the petrodollar system for 40 years. That is the real reason they have never been left alone. The second driver of this conflict, alongside the petrodollar, is the geopolitical vision of the Israeli government known as Greater Israel. This is not a conspiracy theory, it is a documented political ideology that has been debated openly in Israeli political discourse for decades. The concept of Greater Israel refers to the territorial vision outlined in certain interpretations of biblical scripture: a Jewish state, encompassing not just modern Israel, but significant parts of Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and in some versions, parts of Iraq and Saudi Arabia. The modern political expression of this vision, associated with the Likud party and figures like Benjamin Netanyahu, envisions Israeli military and political dominance across the entire Middle East region, with no rival power capable of challenging it. Iran is the single greatest obstacle to this vision, not because of its nuclear program, though that is the stated justification, but because Iran is the only remaining state actor in the Middle East with the military capacity, the regional alliances, and the political will to resist Israeli dominance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran's ally, sits on Israel's northern border. The Houthis in Yemen, supported by Iran, have demonstrated the ability to strike Israeli territory and disrupt global shipping. Hamas, until its recent destruction, was Iran supported. From the Israeli government's strategic perspective, Iran must be neutralized. Not contained, not negotiated with, neutralized. And the military operation launched on February 28, 2026, is the most direct expression of that strategy in history. The killing of Khamenei on day one was not incidental. It was the opening move of a strategy aimed at regime change, the removal of the only government in the Middle East that has consistently refused to accept the regional order that Israel and America have tried to impose. Here is what the bombs do not touch, what sanctions cannot reach, what regime change cannot erase: the Iranian people themselves. Iran has one of the highest literacy rates in the Middle East, over 97%. It produces more science and engineering graduates per capita than almost any country in the world. Iranian universities have continued to function and produce world-class research despite decades of international isolation. Iranian cinema is among the most critically acclaimed in the world. Directors like Abbas Kiarostami and Asghar Farhadi have won international awards while working under severe censorship, producing films of extraordinary humanity and complexity. Iranian poetry is one of the great literary traditions of human civilization. Rumi, who wrote in Persian, is the best-selling poet in the United States. Think about that. The best-selling poet in America is a 13th century Persian Muslim mystic. His poetry sells more copies in America than any American poet. And most Americans who read him have no idea he was Iranian. Hafiz, Omar Khayyam, Ferdowsi, these are not just historical names. They are the bones of Iranian cultural identity. When an Iranian family sits down at Nowruz, the Persian New Year, a tradition that predates Islam by thousands of years, that has survived every invasion and every regime, they recite Hafiz. They read Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, an epic poem of 60,000 verses that preserved the Persian language and Persian identity through the Arab conquest. Culture, this deep, does not break. It bends, it absorbs, it endures. Western media has spent decades painting Iran as a uniquely brutal and oppressive regime. And this narrative has served one purpose: to prepare Western populations to accept military action against Iranian civilians without question. Let us apply some context. Saudi Arabia publicly beheads people in the street. It has been bombing Yemeni civilians since 2015, killing hundreds of thousands. Women in Saudi Arabia could not drive a car until 2018. Saudi Arabia receives $20 billion in American weapons every year and is described by Washington as a valued partner and a force for stability. Egypt's government seized power in a military coup in 2013, imprisoned tens of thousands of political opponents, and has been torturing and executing dissidents ever since. Egypt receives $1.3 billion in US military aid every year. Bahrain crushed its pro-democracy uprising in 2011 with tanks, while America's Fifth Fleet sat in Bahrain's harbor and said nothing. The difference between these governments and Iran is not human rights. It is not democracy. It is not the treatment of women or political prisoners. Every government in the region has blood on its hands. The difference is one thing only: obedience. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Bahrain do what Washington tells them. Iran does not. That is the crime. That is why Iran is sanctioned and bombed, while the others are armed and protected. The Western human rights argument against Iran is not a moral position. It is a weapon, deployed selectively, against the one country in the region that refused to be owned. On March 1st, 2026, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow channel of water at its narrowest point, just 21 miles wide, through which approximately 20% of all global oil and gas supplies transit every single day. Every tanker leaving the Persian Gulf, carrying oil from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, Qatar, passes through this strait. If it closes, the global economy stops. Oil prices immediately surge toward $150 per barrel. Stock markets around the world crashed. Airlines cancelled flights. Shipping companies rerouted vessels around the entire continent of Africa, adding weeks and enormous costs to every journey. The IMF warned of a global recession. Within days of one country closing one waterway, the entire global economy was in crisis. This is Iran's asymmetric warfare strategy, and it is brilliant in its simplicity. Iran cannot match the United States military in conventional warfare. No country can. But Iran does not need to. Iran simply needs to make the cost of attacking it unacceptably high. The Strait of Hormuz is not a military weapon. It is an economic weapon, a financial nuclear option. Iran is saying to the world, you can destroy our buildings, you can kill our leaders, but we will take the global economy down with us. And at that point, the question becomes whether the price of destroying Iran is one the world is willing to pay. It is the strategy of a nation that has learned, over 3,000 years, that it cannot be permanently defeated. It can only make defeat too expensive to pursue. Let us follow the money. Because in every war, the most important question is not who is fighting, it is who is profiting. Lockheed Martin stock rose 8% in the first week of the conflict. Raytheon, which manufactures the missiles being used in strikes on Iran, saw its share price surge. Boeing Defense, Northrop Grumman, the entire American defense contractor sector posted immediate gains the moment the bombs started falling. The military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about in 1961, the complex we discussed in our Rome and America video, does not need wars to be won. It needs wars to continue. Every missile fired is a missile that needs to be replaced. Every bomb dropped is a contract for a new bomb. The oil companies are also profiting. Higher oil prices mean higher profits for every oil producer not involved in the conflict. American shale oil producers, who are competitive at around $60 per barrel, are suddenly enormously profitable at $130 per barrel. Saudi Arabia, which depends on oil revenue to fund its government, is collecting windfall profits. Russia, a major oil exporter not involved in the conflict, is benefiting enormously from elevated prices. And AIPAC, the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, spent $27 million in the 2022 election cycle backing congressional candidates. The members of Congress who received that money have voted to support military aid to Israel, have refused to pass resolutions requiring congressional approval for military action, have backed the operation against Iran at every step. The investment is performing as designed. Follow the money in any war, and you will find the people who wanted the war to happen. The Iranian people did not start this. The American people did not vote for this. The people who profit from this were never on a ballot. Here is the question that 3,000 years of Iranian history forces us to ask. What does it mean to resist? Not in the military sense, but in the deepest philosophical sense. What is the nature of a people who have been invaded, conquered, occupied, sanctioned, bombed, and who are still here, still speaking their language, still celebrating their ancient traditions, still producing poetry that moves the world? The Zoroastrian philosophy that predates Islam in Iran, the ancient religion of the Persian Empire, is built around the eternal struggle between Ahura Mazda, the force of light and truth, and Ahriman, the force of darkness and deception. It is a philosophy that does not promise easy victory. It promises that the struggle is eternal and that the choice to stand on the side of truth, regardless of the cost, is the highest expression of what a human being can be. Cyrus the Great understood this. He did not build his empire through terror alone. He built it through the genuine consent of diverse peoples who chose to be part of something larger than themselves. Rumi understood this. His poetry is an endless meditation on the soul's longing for truth despite the world's attempt to distract and diminish it. The women in the streets of Tehran who removed their hijabs and faced arrest understood this, that the act of standing for your own dignity, regardless of consequence, is its own form of victory. The great Sufi poet Hafez wrote, "Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky." That is Iran at its best. Not the regime, not the bombs, not the geopolitics. The civilization underneath all of it. The one that has been lighting the sky for 3,000 years and is still here. The bombs are still falling as I record this. The outcome is unknown. The talks that were announced may lead somewhere. They may not. Iran may be forced to accept terms. It may not. History is still being written. But here is what history has already written. Every empire that has ever tried to permanently break Iran has failed. The Greeks, the Arabs, the Mongols, the British, the Soviets, all of them, at various points, occupied, controlled, or devastated Iran. None of them broke it. Some of them were absorbed by it. The United States is the most powerful military force in the history of the world. It is also, as we discussed in our Rome and America video, an empire showing the same signs of internal decay that Ibn Khaldun identified in every civilization that came before it. It can destroy buildings. It can kill leaders. What it cannot do, what no empire has ever been able to do, is kill a civilization. Civilizations do not die from bombs. They die from within. When the people lose the will to carry the culture forward, when the language dies, when the poetry is forgotten, when the children no longer know who they are. Iranian children still learn Ferdowsi. Iranian families still celebrate Nowruz. Iranian poets are still writing. The language of Cyrus the Great is still spoken by 80 million people. Whatever happens in the skies above Tehran in the coming weeks and months, that will not change. The sun never says to the earth, "You owe me," empires of thought. This is only the beginning.